Hello. Whoop. A fly comes straight in the way as a start there. Well, I'm going to keep going anyway. It's wonderful to be with. It's wonderful to be with you all again. That really put me off my stride, didn't it? Thank you so much for the encouragements that keep coming in. It's just amazing to hear the testimonies, stories, and things that God has done through this teaching. So, right, let's. Oh, dear. Oh well. Uh, hope you're having a good morning. Hey, we're on Acts 4 today, and going to look at some of the things that go on here. I think probably Acts 4 will be split over a couple of sessions, and we'll see how we get on again. But I just want us to, as we look at this, allow ourselves just to understand the environment that was going on at the time. And you can look at the early days of the church and you could focus on the miracles in the previous chapter. In chapter 3, we saw the guy that was healed. Um, you could focus on the delight and the amazingness of the day of Pentecost and the testimonies, and 3,000 people added to the church that day, the mass baptisms that were going on, the Holy Spirit, the stories they must have been telling as they talked about the Holy Spirit moving and speaking in different languages. And now we've got that side of the story, but you've also got the other side, which we can't, let go of. And it's the tensions in the story. And the church really, really was in a time of extreme tension. You go back, it's only a little while ago when they'd seen Jesus brutally murdered. And that tension hasn't gone away. In fact, if anything, tension is at this point getting multiplied. So here we are in Acts 4, and let's just read a little bit of it. It says, the priests and the captain of the temple guards and the Sadducees came up to Peter and John while they were speaking to the people. Remember, they were preaching the gospel. They were declaring it's a time of God's favor. They were declaring that the Holy Spirit would be poured out, bringing times of refreshing. And these people, you it puts it well here. It says they were greatly disturbed. So that isn't a passive thing. That's an agitation. That's um, an environment that clearly is going to have a lot of tension. It says they were greatly disturbed because the apostles were teaching the people, proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection of the dead. And you have these people listening on, and their hearts are so hard to the gospel. They're not open to really listen, but they have a position. And at this point, their position is being challenged. But they are a people that have authority. And when they hear this, they're so disturbed, they just don't know what to do. And it says in verse 3, they seized Peter and John. Now, when you read that again, I want us to um, just understand that this seizing is like a violently grabbing them. They couldn't handle a message. So the tension here is ramping up. And they'd already been warned, hadn't they, that there would be times of persecution. But the courage here is Peter and John in the time of persecution. They they're standing up for the gospel, and in that moment they're arrested. And it says because it was evening, they're thrown into prison, into jail the next day. Not a pleasant experience in that culture. But the background of this is many heard the message and believed. So the number of men who believed grew to about 5,000. It doesn't even say how many women, how many children, because there would have been whole families that believed. And so this is the tension, the culture that they're living in. The tension that you've got arrest on one side, yet you've got this glorious outpouring of the Holy Spirit, that Jesus was being glorified and the gospel was advancing. Now, that's a theme that would be through really all of Christian history. When God moves powerfully, there's always people that oppose. There's always people that have a comment. There's always people that have something to say. As believers, we have to be careful. We're not the ones making the comment. We're not the ones that are holding up a standard on behalf of God. God's more than capable of holding up his own standards. Sometimes we can get stuck in what we know and not embrace what God is actually doing in the time. So you've got this tension time, many people being added to the church, the preaching of the gospel being powerful and effective, yet Peter and John are thrown into prison. So as many who heard the message believed, and you got this growth of the church. Then the next day, this is verse 5, says the rulers, the elders, the teachers of the law met in Jerusalem. Ananias, the high priest, was there. There was Caiaphas, John, Alexandra, and others of the high priest family. So they're all going to be ganging together. And Peter and John are brought before them, and they began to question them. And this was the question: by what power or name did you do this? I like that question, because that very question says that they recognized that something had happened that was supernatural. They recognized that something had happened that was beyond the normal. And so their question was saying, what power do you have? When it says, or what name do you do this? It says, where's the authority come from? They understood that term, that idea that you're acting in the name of something. It's a bit like that bit's a bit like a police officer. The police officer can make an arrest because they're acting on behalf of, actually in this country it's the Queen. They have a delegated authority to do something, and they recognise that Peter and John might have delegated authority because they were moving in power. Verse 8, beautiful statement here, and one that I want us to pick up and get hold of. It says, then Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit, said to them. What had the disciples been told earlier? They'd been told that they didn't need to pre-prepare what they were going to say. They didn't need to have a defense ahead of time. Jesus said to them, says, the Spirit will give you what to say at the time. And there is always a time for preparation. There is always a time for working things through. And some people, the way they're wired, the teachers need to be able to teach line by line, step by step. So there's always time for that. But this is what Jesus is getting at. We mustn't allow our preparation to override. We mustn't allow our preparation to override the leading of the Spirit. That's where we get into trouble. And one of the things in life for us, we may not face this situation, but let's allow in those moments the Holy Spirit to flow. There's a big difference between taking a position and going, there's a big difference between taking that position and saying, if I get the opportunity, I'm going to share the gospel like this. And we prepare our route. And it's a bit like going along with a mallet and going on someone with the gospel. But instead of that position, if our position is that we're full of the love of God, and then in the moment, as a conversation that unfolds, we're not going with our pre-packed testimony, our story, the thing we want them to know, but actually we're allowing the Holy Spirit to lead the conversation. And the person's not getting a pre-packed version of the gospel, but they're receiving our heart. And in our heart, the gospel comes out. So here, Peter, full of the Holy Spirit, starts to speak. And I'm just looking at this, I'm thinking, I'm going to stop there because I think I can draw the next bit together in one go. But I want to encourage us this week. Learn, yeah, we're prepared in the sense our hearts, we're worshippers, we're engaged with God, but we're on an adventure so that we'll find ourselves saying things that we didn't expect to say, but at just the right thing, at just the right time, in just the right way. So next time you get an opportunity to share your faith, don't come with your pre-packed faith. Just say quietly, Father, lead me in this conversation that your name's glorified. Bring things up that will touch someone's heart. And you'll be amazed at the number of times I've been in conversations where you're just generally having a conversation, but something's said and the Holy Spirit highlights it, and then you follow that trail. I think it is amazing how God does that as we learn more and more to be led by the Spirit of God. Well, thank you for being with me. It started rather unusually with a fly buzzing around the place, but there we go. Not editing anything nowadays, just as it is. So have a wonderful week. Look forward to being with you next time.